All right, we did it. We're live. I am just starting to do the wash on my tea. I forgot what tea I have. I think I have the one that is from 2011, which means this tea is almost 12 years old. Wait, almost 11 years old. No, I don't have that tea. This tea is from 2015, 2014 to 2016, and it is gnarly. It's like low quality tea, but on purpose. There's like twigs and stuff in there, and it's packed super tightly, the tightest that this factory packs their tea, and it's meant to help it ferment in a real funky way, and it kind of tastes like it tastes a lot like tobacco. Kind of tastes like smoky beef jerky, salty beef jerky. Um, and I call it Tobacco Barnyard Party because of its tobacco kind of smell and flavor. Otherwise, I mean, it tastes delicious. I mean, not even in spite of it is because of that it tastes delicious. So, welcome to the morning. If you are watching this, you can see that I'm a showered boy. I showered, and that is a big deal. Or not. It doesn't really matter. But I showered. I showered. And it is approximately 8:26, and I feel like 8:30 this morning has felt really good. I feel like 8:30 is a good 8:30 Central. It's a good time for me to start this little shindiggery, and I may need to re-boil this water. I don't have it in the little carafe as I did yesterday when I tried to drink tea outside, but it was too cold. I like to just use the kettle because then I can reheat the water. But if it does that, it'll boil and be loud, and sometimes it makes this noise kind of like one of those old-timey radiators. It's like, you're welcome for that. Cheers. Yeah, and I haven't drank any tea yet today, where yesterday I had already started the tea session and had moved it into a public tea session. Oh, yeah, that's good. Kind of had a little bit of coffee in there. Yeah, that's good shit. And if you're drinking tea, welcome. If you're drinking nothing, welcome. If you're drinking water, it's all the same to me. Just enjoy it as much as you possibly can because it is great no matter what. Even if it gives you dysentery, it's great. I've never had dysentery, but I've heard some pretty gnarly things about it. Well, let's just get right into it, I think. So, my reflection this morning came to me before I even sat down to have this tea because it came to me as I was getting this stream put together. Also, it is maybe even more bright than it was yesterday because my eyes they feel like caterpillars, like hairy, spiky caterpillars. That's what my eyes feel like. I thought a shower would help me open my eyes, give me a little clarity to how harsh the sun is, and maybe it's not as bad. And if I feel a little more awake, the sun is less abrasive. But oh, I think a cloud just came to. No, it didn't. Maybe I just opened my eyes a little bit more. I don't make any fucking sense. but this tea is good. So my reflection came to me as I was setting this up. And it's not necessarily a reflection yet, but it was just something that I listened to. And I was curious to dig into it, especially here. Even though I showered and I dug into it a little bit there. But I totally forgot what I went through, and I'll probably get back to it. But the thought that came to me as I was setting this stuff up wasn't a specific thought, but it was this general feeling of fear, maybe. But it was an experience of wanting to close off at a certain point. That there was a push, maybe that was fear, to armor myself in some way from the blow to my ego that would be being too open and weird on the internet, or being too excited about sharing an experience that I have found to anyone, when it feels like, from my perspective, that nobody really seems to be sharing this experience unless if they are high or drunk. Those are the only people that I've really been able to effectively communicate the experience where their response was, yeah, you're so right. It's only been with people who have really experienced or are experiencing being very high or elated through alcohol or have recently taken a psychedelic. I don't necessarily know where I was going with that, but an example is I had this thought a couple days ago that, well, to give you some context, I made an Instagram account because I wanted to look at Ben Schleicher's photography on Instagram, because he was going to be a guest. He is a guest on our podcast. And I wanted to look at his photos and read his captions because they're very thoughtful and beautiful and mind-blowing in a fantastic, wonderful, and reverent way. But to look at all of his catalog, I needed to make an Instagram account. And so I created one. And my old one, I don't know the login or password to. So I had to create a new one. Created this new one, looked at Ben's photos, but now there's this Instagram thing sitting there. And the thought was, I should put only one photo up on that Instagram. And what that one photo has to be is a full frontal nude photo. Hear me out, okay? It sounds crazy, and it is, but from my perspective, if I am serious about being as open and willing to share my full self as much as I possibly can on the internet, not even just on the internet, but just in life in general. If it is true that I have found an experience of connectedness, an experience of love, an experience of being that is not this solipsistic, lonely ego self, something beyond that, and I got to it through an openness and a willingness to be here, then what a wonderful and beautiful opportunity it is to put up a full frontal nude photo and say, this is the entirety of my being that I can share with you on Instagram. That is as naked as I can possibly be. And the caption that I thought of at the time was, I feel like this belongs here. And there's something beautiful in my mind about the idea of if everybody had just a simple naked photo. Now, obviously, there is a shit ton of baggage there, but not even in spite of that, but because of that, it would make it one of the most beautiful things about being human. There's so much sexual shame and guilt, and there's so much body shame and guilt, and there's so much wrong about it. Yet it's so simple and it's so truthful. An unedited naked picture of your body. The thing that we all walk around in and think is ourselves is something that we hide from as much of the world as we possibly can. I mean, I don't think my mother has seen my penis since I was very, very young. You're welcome, Mom. You made a weird son. Now you got to deal with that one. Very good tea. Get yourself some tea. So that is a thought that awoke in this part of myself, really, that is scared of being judged, of not. It's scared of not connecting. It's scared of sending its USB port out into the world and not finding that, or finding that it doesn't have a point that it can connect to. That there's just no female part to my USB drive. And really that part of myself is like putting the cap on the male side of the USB. This is sort of a bad metaphor. Let me rephrase it a little bit. There's a part of me that I almost went even further into it. There's a part of me that is afraid that if I reach out into the universe, the only thing I'll find out there is a void. That if I open myself up to not knowing, that on the other side of not knowing is emptiness. And there's a huge part of me that is holding on to that as a truth. That is holding on to the other side of being is emptiness. That without consciousness, without life, without self, there is nothing. Thankfully, through experience of various different kinds, I've experienced that that is not the end, that there is something on the other side of consciousness. That if I open my being up to what I imagine to be the void, I find it filled with something that I cannot feel while I'm here. Christ, and if that makes sense to you, you are a saint, because that barely makes any sense to me, and I feel great, and I love you. So I feel that I'm going to change gears here. I don't know if I finished that thought very well. But I feel this sort of dual located, bilocated movement where the two parts of my being, the one that I feel myself falling more into, that's moving into openness, moving into love, moving into awareness, and the part of me that is holding on to a continuous self, a beginning, middle, end story of who I am, located in this body with this personality, and desperate to keep that as the status quo. That one part, the part of me that's falling into something that feels more like my true self, becomes more and more excited about existing and being there, and the other side becomes more and more afraid of everything and anything. That maybe I have gone too far. Maybe because I said mom and penis in the same sentence, that I have officially done it, that I have ruined everything. That maybe if I put a naked photo on the internet, that I have done it. I have broken Tyler. I have broken this image of what this being is supposed to be. And that is not okay to that part of me. The part of me that believes that I need to be the most valuable version of myself. And that most valuable version of myself is in part wanting to make sure that the world doesn't have access to it. Because if the world has access to it, I will have to be open. And if I have to be open, then the world has the opportunity to hurt me. And I don't want that. Let's pour some tea. And it is just that simple. That the part of me that I had invested my entire life with up until after college had simply just been the whole time trying to make sure that it would not get hurt. And really only recently, the Talis on that side, I have been considering what has been the cost of that sort of fear, that sort of armoring, that sort of lack of willingness to be with what is. Take a drink with me. There's so much tea dust in this. Oh, I'll show you the tea if you're watching. Don't do that. Don't stick your finger in the teacup. It's disrespectful. They have like 3 knuckles in there. But, smell-o-vision. Look at that. All right, where were we? The tea is distracting, but in a good way. It's like a grounding. It's like, we're here. We're here. It's just this tea. Don't get too worked up about your archaic, well, I guess not archaic necessarily, but esoteric for sure, abstracted ideas, when really what is important is this tea. Thank you for just letting me take a moment here. I know I can do whatever I want, but thank you anyway. All right, so let's try to see how more we can identify what are these parts? What is the part that is afraid, and what is the part that's moving more into something? What is the part that is like has a childlike excitement about moving into this nakedness? I don't know if you've ever been around a like young child who really loves just being naked, like physically, literally being naked, and that like the parent has put pants on the child like 4 or 5 times, but you turn around and the child has no pants on once again. It sort of feels like there's a part of me that's like that, where it's just constantly running around trying to take its pants off. This is a horrible metaphor. See, that's the part of me that's like, don't judge me, please. Don't judge me. I'm making a weird metaphor, but really I'm a cool guy if you just get to know me. If you get to know the me that I want you to know, it's cool. But don't listen to that part of me that doesn't care what you think, because that part isn't the true me. Gosh damn. I wish it made a lick of sense. At least, if anything, we have this time together to just be with T. Take another drink with me. Wowza. That is fantastic. Okay. And so the other part of me is experiencing now a life like a parent who feels too responsible for their child's being. Like a parent who has a child who keeps wanting to get naked, but continues to clothe that child for fear that an unclothed child is not the right way. And so there is a really curious relationship within me of a sort of argumentative parenthood of my ego thinking that it is the part of me that is responsible for the continuation of being. My ego wholeheartedly believes that without it, this whole thing is going down. That without clothes, without a certain sense of self-perception, without a certain sense of desire, without a certain level of motivation, that this whole process of being will cease, will no longer be. Which is hilarious from certain perspectives. I think I've stuck my tendrils far enough into that one to know that it needs a lot more time to ruminate on, to really get to the next level of wisdom that is available there, and a certain quality of listening that I am not cultivating in this space of speaking through thoughts, because this space is a kind of like a roller coaster. It's on rails and it's moving, and it doesn't have time to sit and smell the roses. And so I might put that one on a back burner to reflect upon later. But one thing that I have been reflecting upon more and more over the last little bit is spring. And people love to reflect upon spring. People love people, and by people I mean people I'm surrounded with, obviously. You can take it as far as you want and say, yeah, no, all people, but people I'm surrounded by love to reflect upon spring. It's so cool because everything comes back to life. It was inert in the winter, and now the sun is hotter in a certain sense. Not literally, the sun didn't get hotter, but it got closer. And it feels hotter. But what I love to reflect on is that during spring, or at the beginning of spring, not only does life come back online, but the processes of dying also come back. That decay and rot have also been inert through the winter. That the lack of heat not only saps life from its ability to move and be active and in the world, but it also, in that sense, saps the energy from rot and decay to transform the world into material that can be transformed into life. And so it points to an interesting relationship between life and death, where the life that is here and the death and the rot and decay that is here necessitate and facilitate each other. That life continues until death comes to take it. Transformation then comes afterward to be made available once again to be filtered back into life. And this is the Lion King circle of life. That life feeds on death, death is inevitable for life, and they work through and necessitate each other. And when you can look at this cyclical process in a mind that is open to a sort of non-continuity, a sort of perception of the universe not through the lens of this self-perception of beginning at the beginning of consciousness, living a life, and then ending at death, but beginning at the beginning of the process of this life and ending at the process of this life. Not only does your life take a different shape and form, in that the sort of perception of birth is hard to grasp onto, and the perception of death being hard to grasp onto, but it also opens you to a sort of thought and experience that I do not have the capability of really articulating in this moment. That there is a sort of shift of perspective away from the self that perceives itself as the one who was born and the one who will die. That there is an ability somewhere to move this locality of maybe not consciousness, maybe not the awake consciousness, but perhaps the consciousness, away from the self of this body and this mind and personality, and into that process that has been going on and will continue. I wrote down a couple days ago, thinking about that saying, I'm too young to die. And what I wrote down was, you're not too young to die. You don't even know how old you are. And it just tickled me so well. You're not too young to die. You don't even know how old you are. And it is ultimately that you are not subject to your life as a being, but you are subject to your you're being facilitated through the cycle of life and death. That at the end of the day, your processes are not a process of thought directing experience, but the processes of the laws of the universe directing life and death. And that your consciousness and experience and thought are just a locus and lens for which the universe can experience that sort of thing. Wow. I think I need a nap for that one. Okay, yeah. This is why yesterday I mentioned that I'll go over past reflections with you and we'll get into reflecting together, because when it's in this state of purposeless reflection, that it's free form and it can go where it wants to go, that in that state I have not trained my brain to be able to articulate and talk that through. That I'm not in touch with the experience of that enough to be integrated with it so that the speaking comes without effort, if that makes sense. And so the retrospective sense and the statement of being in the past where I have experienced it and now I can relay it because there's a certain level of separation there is a lot easier. But trying to be within the experience and relay it while you're there, that is a task if I have ever heard one. That is difficult. Only in the sense that it can be. Oh, so exciting. Have more tea in the cup. Yes. Okay, that was our silence. I didn't tell you that we were going into it because it was a test. It was a test to see how much silence is integrated into your life and how comfortable you are with it. And so, though it was short, though it may not have been peaceful, understand that in that moment you were interfacing with and confronting silence in a way that you might not before. And so just take a little second, if you're still here, to think retrospectively about how you interacted with being confronted with silence. Because that is the important part of doing nothing, of being in silence, is your confrontation with nothingness and how you're interfacing with it. Are you avoiding it at all cost? Are you uncomfortable, made uncomfortable by it? What is it? How are you interfacing with it? And how can you work on that? Amen. Get out of here. Go have a great day. Goodbye.